Hello everyone, today we will be going over another instructional chess game, and I hope that this will help you all improve. Today's game is all about weaknesses. Sometimes when we play, we make careless moves that weaken our position, and while it may not seem like our opponent can capitalize on these weaknesses during the moment, somewhere down the line, these weaknesses that we have created will become a hindrance toward us, and in some cases they may even cost us the game. There are two important facts about weaknesses in chess. First, weaknesses in our position are bad, and we should absolutely refrain from unnecessarily creating these weaknesses. Second, if our opponent has a weakness, we should work on attacking that weakness to tie our opponent down and make his position difficult. Today, I will demonstrate these important points, and by seeing these points visually, I hope that you will grasp a better understanding of weaknesses in chess. Okay, let's get started. This game was played in 1929 with Hermanis Mattison with the white pieces playing against the famous positional player Aron Nimzowich with the black pieces. Nimzowich was an extremely talented positional player, and his talents are showcased perfectly in this game. White starts by moving his pawn to d4, and black responds by developing his knight to f6. White plays c4, and black plays e6. After this move, black has chosen to go for the common opening called the Nimzo-Indian defense, which is actually named after Aron Nimzowich, who is playing the black pieces. White then develops his knight to c3, and Nimzowich responds by moving his bishop to b4, pinning the c3 knight against the white king. White plays knight f3, developing his knight, and black captures this knight, and white captures back. After white captures back, we enter into a double-edged position. Black has successfully doubled white's pawns, as you can see on c3 and c4, but that has come at the cost of giving up the bishop pair. You can see that white has two bishops here, but black only has one. While knights and bishops are worth the same amount of points, bishops are generally a little better than knights, and having a bishop pair, like white does in this position, will give a slight advantage, generally. However, note that this is always just a generalization and that there are always exceptions to this. In this position though, this generalization is true, and having the bishop pair does give white a slight advantage, just a small one. And it is up to the two players now to determine whether the bishop pair or the double pawns will be worth more in the long run. So Nimzowich plays d6, and his opponent moves his queen to a more active square on c2. Nimzowich also moves his queen, this time to e7, and white develops his bishop to a3, hoping to put pressure against black by lining up his bishop against the black queen, as you can see. And now, Nimzowich plays a fantastic move, moving his pawn to c5. The reason why I think this is a great move is that Nimzowich is playing against white's weakness, the double pawns, and more specifically, the weak pawn on c4. Nimzowich blocks this weak pawn and plans to play against it by attacking it in the future, as you will see later on. White has trouble defending this pawn because he cannot protect it with another pawn. Usually, white can push his pawn from b2 to b3 or from d2 to d3 to support the pawn on c4, but in this position, as you can see, it is impossible. Realizing this, Nimzowich tailors his game plan to taking advantage of this fact and attacking the c4 pawn. Okay, both sides develop their pieces with g3, b6, bishop g2, bishop b7, castles, and castles, which are pretty standard moves, just developing your pieces and putting your king to a safer position. White plays knight h4 here, hoping to trade bishops, and black obliges, capturing, and the white king captures back. Here, Nimzowich maneuvers his queen by checking the black king, moving it to b7, and white has to move out of check, so white moves his king to g1, and Nimzowich finishes maneuvering his queen to a6, which is now attacking white's weakness on c4. White defends his bishop and his pawn at the same time by moving his queen to b3, and Nimzowich continues to attack white's weakness, this time finding a great route with his knight, he moves his knight to c6, and then after white moves rook fd1, Nimzowich finishes maneuvering his knight to a5. And this attacks the queen and white's weakness on c4 at the same time. Here, black is attacking the weakness twice with his knight and with his queen, and white is only defending it once. So the only way to save that pawn is to move his queen to b5. As if white moves his queen somewhere else, say to a4, black can just capture the pawn for free. So after queen b5, Nimzowich exchanges queens. And after c takes b5, here, it appears as white has gotten rid of his weakness on c4. His pawns are no longer doubled, and the weak pawn on c4 no longer exists. This is not the case, however, as Nimzowich manages to skillfully create another weakness in white's position. He first plays knight c4, attacking white's bishop on a3. The only safe square for white is to retreat his bishop to c1, and then black plays a6, attacking the pawn on b5. If white tries to defend his pawn here by moving to a4, black can capture the pawn for free. White can never recapture with this pawn because this will open up the file and black captures the rook on a1 for free. If he tries to defend it in a different way with rook b1, he'll once again lose a pawn because captures, rook captures, and the rook is no longer protecting the pawn on a2, so black wins a pawn for free. So therefore, after a6, the only move that white can play is to capture the pawn, and after rook captures back, it becomes clear that white has weaknesses on a2 and c3. Both pawns are weak and cannot be defended by other pawns, and realizing this, Nimzowich once again tailors his game plan to attacking these weak pawns. White opts to trade pawns, capturing on c5, Nimzowich captures back, and then white brings his knight to g2, hoping to maneuver it perhaps to e3 or to f4, where it will be more of use than on h4. However, black does not give white the time for this, and he moves his knight to d5, actively attacking the weak pawn on c3. White defends with rook d3, protecting the pawn, and after rook a8, black is once again attacking white's weaknesses. Remember, white has two weaknesses here, the pawn on a2 and the pawn on c3. Black doubles up his rooks, and with two pieces now threatening the a2 pawn that only has one defender, black is threatening to win the pawn for free in this position. And there's nothing that white can do to defend it because, once again, he has too many weaknesses. The pawn on c3 and the pawn on a2. White is completely tied down, trying to defend these two, and he cannot successfully defend them at the same time. So, here, white tries to go e4, hoping to kick the knight out of d5, so to relieve some pressure off of c3. However, Nimzowich plays knight e5, threatening the rook. And after this move, white just resigns here, because there's nothing white can do to protect his weaknesses. He has to move his rook out of danger, but when he does that, black can just capture the pawn for free, attacking the rook. He moves away, and he just takes the other weakness. And now white is down 2 pawns, and the game will be decided shortly. This was truly a beautiful game that highlighted the importance of weaknesses. The whole game, white was tied down by his weaknesses, and he could never pursue his own plans and was always at the mercy of black. Black accomplished this by successfully identifying his opponent's weaknesses and relentlessly applying pressure on them. This is something that you should always look out for in your own games and try to replicate. I hope this game has helped you gain a better understanding of weaknesses and chess itself. As always, thank you all for watching and have a good day.